Hi, Keith here with Rebel Civics on Unsafe Space. Javier Milei won the November 2023 election in Argentina. He's going to become the world's first Libertarian Party president on December 10th. He's an Austrian School economist, a university professor. He was chief economist of several private companies. He's an author. He was a singer in a Rolling Stones cover band. Now he's turned politician. Milei described himself as an anarco-capitalist. So today, Scott Scheller joins Rebel Civics to provide the story of Milei and his rise in politics. Scott has a background on Argentina's politics and culture. He's been following Milei's rise since 2019. He has family in Argentina. His father-in-law is an Austrian economist and an academic and author in Argentina. So Scott, welcome to Rebel Civics.
Hey, Keith. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's this will be interesting to find out about Argentina. So I'm probably pretty normal in the United States. I know very little about Argentina, and I know nothing about their economy and politics. I do happen to know where it is, but we're going to pop up the map. So let's just kind of start for people that really have just heard of Milei, which is me. Like I heard of Milei 2 weeks ago. Don't really know much about Argentina, although I did have 5 years of Spanish in high school, grammar school and high school. So I do know where Argentina is. I know how to say El Loco, Milei's nickname. So anyway, yeah, just kind of give us an overview of what just happened in Argentina and why this happened.
Okay, so in Argentina, Javier Milei won the election. In Argentina, Javier Milei is a total outsider that got into politics about 2 years ago, and was actually a prominent pundit and libertarian commentator that was on their airways for about 8-9 years. So he's been well known to people that are involved in politics as a top commentator. But in 2021, he was elected to the Congress, surprisingly. So he was expected to get 1% of the vote. He ended up getting 17% of the vote, which got him elected to the deputies, the lower house in Argentina in 2021, which was a huge groundbreaking event in Argentina at the time. He then used a lot of stunts and stuff to increase his popularity and his status in Argentina, and decided to run for president for this most recent term. And despite all the odds, despite not having any money whatsoever, ended up getting elected in Argentina, beating the two main parties as a third party that had just, his party was established 2 years prior to him winning. So he established his party, La Libertad Avanza, which means liberty advances, 2 years before getting elected president. So it's maybe the most meteoric rise in the history of politics. And he's totally shook things up in Argentina in a way that's never happened before, at least in the last 150 years.
Yeah, the to go from an unknown, relatively unknown, I guess, except in academic circles, as an
Right.
economist, to winning the presidency in 2 years is amazing, and it's a sign of what's actually going on in Argentina. So I had to look, like, here's where Argentina is for the people that don't know. It's huge. You were telling me right before we started. Most Americans, I think, probably most Europeans don't know. Argentina, I think you said like
It's
north to south is as big as Alaska down to middle of Mexico.
Yeah. So if you overlay Argentina on the map of in the U.S., there's a site that does that proportionate makes it proportional stuff. If you put the northern part of Argentina into Alaska, it goes all the way down into Mexico. So it goes from Alaska down to Mexico. It's about a third the size of the U.S. It's over half the size of Europe. So this is a huge country. It's the breadbasket of the world. They have more cattle. They have like 55 million cattle in Argentina. They have only 45 million humans. So it is like the breadbasket of the world. Well, it could be because of the socialism and stuff. Its agriculture is all messed up, but um, it's known. Its food is just amazing. Its steak is the best in the world, but it is a large country, or large country, and because it's only have 45 million people, it's actually outside of Buenos Aires. It's actually very kind of empty, and it has outside of Buenos Aires in that green area you see, it is all farms. So it is massive farms that look like Illinois or Iowa, and you see just so much cattle everywhere. Cattle, and they do a lot of horses as well. They breed horses there to sell and stuff. So cattle, animals, massive farms. It is maybe the best place in the world to grow crops. The climate, it's got a long growing season. The soil is extremely fertile. It's an extremely resource rich country that was the richest country in the world at the turn of the 20th century. So there was a saying back 100 years ago, as rich as an Argentinian, because Argentina um, was considered rich. Sorry.
How did it, with all that richness, how did it end up in such dire straits economically?
So the turn of the so in 1865, there was a guy named Alberti that um, Argentina gained independence from Spain in like 1816. Argentina kind of waffled there for a long time. Didn't really have a lot of growth. It was kind of stagnant. And then in 1865, Alberti, I forget his first name, he's like Argentina's Thomas Jefferson, decided to copy the U.S. Constitution and model itself after the U.S. So after modeling themselves after the U.S. Constitution-wise, they had some really good presidents that adopted free market, laissez-faire economics mostly. They had a huge immigration from Italy and Spain mostly, um, and Argentina's economy just burgeoned when they discovered refrigerated shipping, so reefers. They started to export everywhere in the world, and they became the richest country in the world by the turn of the 20th century. They are richer than the United States, um, and so they had grown so much in 35 years. They had gone from this poor, like very poor country to this really rich country. So around World War I, Argentina doesn't get involved in world politics, which is a beautiful thing about Argentina. They haven't been involved in World War One, Two, anything like terror war.
They're neutral in the world wars?
They are always neutral. Yes, so that's a good thing about Argentina. They weren't involved really into even the Cold War. But during World War One, they elected. They kind of took their they kind of followed the United States. So the United States started to go progressive with Woodrow Wilson, with Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt. So by World War One, they didn't get involved, but they elected these hardcore progressive Woodrow Wilson types, and they started to do the whole progressive agenda, regulating businesses and that sort of thing. They got off the gold standard, which they had been on. And fast forward in the 1930s, during the Depression, which had hurt Argentina as well, a military coup took the socialist progressives out of power. And at that time, there was this fascination a little bit with fascism, and this president, this general came to power in Argentina named Juan Perón. And Juan Perón has been the most dominant figure in Argentina ever since. And Juan Perón basically introduced national socialism, more like fascism. He was the one that, if you're familiar, gave refuge to Nazis after
Oh,
World War.
a lot moved there, right? That's how a lot of Nazis ended up in Argentina.
Yes, because Perón was a fascist. Basically, he was not super ideological, but he took power in the 1930s, and his story is remarkable. I can see why there is some of a cult of personality around him, because even now, I mean, up until the 1930s to now, basically, you can't be a politician without being a Peronist. So he is like the Abraham Lincoln of Argentina. This
So he
national,
wow, he qualifies as the worst president in
yes,
Argentinian history,
and
like
yeah,
Lincoln
and
is
he
ours?
did some stuff like it was way later than the United States, but he allowed women to vote. Um, the stuff like that. But the economy was always terrible under Perón. So what happened is he took power in the 1930s through this coup, got power, and they actually tried to coup him. But he outsmarted the military, actually, which is part of his story. And he got to talk. They allowed him to talk to the people in this long talk, and he talked to the people and basically rallied the people around him. So he actually outsmarted the military, and that allowed him basically to stay in power. And so that's part of his lore. And then eventually, I mean, the economy is always, he would overspend. So he basically tried to unionize everything. He would spend an enormous amount of money on public spending and on public employees to try and because he didn't know economics, he just really he just did anything he could to really get his political power higher, to advance his political power. And that involved increasing spending on things more than they took into taxes and all that stuff. And so they had to use the printing press. And so eventually the economy was so bad that they did coup him again, and they exiled him. So that's another part of his story. So they exile him. I
Correct.
believe he went to Venezuela and then Spain, and his followers. So basically, in Argentina at a time, you couldn't even say his name. But starting, I believe, in the 70s, when he was old, he came back into power in Argentina. He came back to Argentina, got back to power. And so all of these, like these things, these lore about him, getting exiled, outsmarting the military, even though the economy was always terrible when he was in power, he is this political force. And another thing that why he became so popular is in the 30s, or either the 20s or early 30s, he went to fascist Italy, and he learned from Mussolini
Oh,
how to use mass communications to basically propagandize the citizens. So that's what he did. He actually learned from Mussolini how to do this,
and
how
then
to
he came
use.
back
Yeah,
and
so
rose to power again
well, no, that's like he did that,
in
and then
70s.
he did that, and then he got that first coup that put him in power. He learned that before the coup,
Mhm.
so he learned how Mussolini
Oh,
used mass communications to basically propagandize the people and put him in more power, and he dominated the airways. So in that way, kind of like Roosevelt, if we recall how popular Roosevelt was, he used radio and everything else, his fireside chats and all that. Perón was the same way. Perón weaponized um, mass communications, which had really never existed to that extent before.
And he established kind of a social moved it much more socialist
Yes, he kept.
towards
He
time
was
in the
way more
70s.
socialist. You know, Argent. He nationalized a lot of industries. He spent so much money. He increased taxes. He unionized the whole country. Um,
So that happened. So in the 70s, and it started really going downhill.
well,
That's
every
the when
single
he came
time he
back.
took power, the economy did terrible. So it's like, why is this guy popular? But it's this lore about him, like, you know, like I
We
said.
always say you could do it better. That wasn't.
Oh,
He didn't do it right.
also his wife Evita Peron, you heard of
Oh,
Evita
yeah.
Peron, was insanely popular. She was, I believe, a prostitute that he ended up marrying, and she died young. She died when she was 33. She was very beautiful, and she was just, you know, like Princess Diana or somebody that dies young. She was so popular in Argentina. She was like FDR's wife, but more popular.
I recognize the name, but I didn't know the
Evita, yeah,
connection.
Evita.
And also I'm wondering because I've been hearing the last week I learned this word Peronist, like everybody's
Yes,
a Peronist. It comes from
every,
him?
yes, that's him. It's like
Okay.
everybody's a Peronist because that's who he is, and it has morphed. It has morphed over the years, and basically, he also was a big mercantilist too. So basically, he weaponized the state to increase his political power.
And along the way, the economy goes downhill. And now we end
Yes,
up with they got 140% inflation
yes,
and
and
the whole
I
bit.
can kind of get into what. So after he took power, his when he died in the 70s, his wife became president, which is that happens in Argentina. They run with their wives and stuff.
It's a royalty.
Yeah, it's you know, he was democratically elected or whatever, but he ran with his wife, and she was a disaster. There was another coup.
This is a new wife?
Yeah, after
Evita was
Evita
the
died, he married another woman, and she became president. She was a disaster. There was a military coup, and from 1977 to 1981 or 82, the military ran the country, and that's when they did the Falkland Islands War, because
Oh,
they were because the Falkland Islands is Argentinians consider it theirs, and but it's under British control. It's right off the coast of, and they actually went to war with the British, and that was sort of, it was a huge failure for Argentina. And that was sort of, they did that because they never changed. They didn't make the market free. They still had the same socialist policies as everybody else when the military government took power. So the economy was terrible. They actually went to war over the Malvinas or the Falkland Islands. Malvinas is in what they call it in Spanish, but over the Falkland Islands to try to gain support through the, you know, from the people. So yeah, it's right there. The Falkland Islands
I
are
do remember that. For some reason, the British think it's theirs.
yeah,
Uh,
it's British. Yeah, it's British. But Argentina has always considered it theirs.
but you can see how
Yeah, and
far that is from England.
yeah. So, but it mostly British people live there and stuff. But so they went to war, and then the after 1983, they introduced democracy in Argentina, and it's been a democracy ever since. But ever since then, it's been run by Peronist. In 1989, they had a hyperinflation. Um, in 2001, they had maybe the biggest financial crisis in world history. One of them. The 90s were actually a pretty good time in Argentina. And they got back to kind of being prosperous. And then in 2001, there was this massive financial crisis where they defaulted on debt, and they basically, all this money that people had, they was worthless, and it was a huge. They had like 5 presidents in 1 week, and during that time.
In 1 week.
Yes, it was just a huge, and they've never recovered from that. So
So
going forward, since that time, the ruling party has been the Kirchners. So there's two of them, It's the husband. I forget what's his name. The husband, Kircher. I forget his name. Fernandez. He was president up until his death, and then his wife became president and ran the country for 8 years. And they, like Perón, they weaponized the media and everything else to consolidate power, and they are awful. Cristina Fernandez, they totally went left, socialist, and weaponized everything for to maintain power. Christina was on the when she became president in 2007. She on is like every single day she was on the television. Um, they they took control. They started subsidizing slash nationalizing all of the media, and they took control basically of like they took political control in 2021. When she ran for her second term, um, she got 54% of the vote in the first round, meaning that there was like 5 or 6 parties going against her. 54% of the vote, and the second place was 16%. So they had a dominant political, and she was she was a Peronist, but add all these social justice. So she was just a huge social justice warrior. She wanted to change the language. You know how Spanish is gendered. She wanted to change the entire language
To
so that
degenderize Spanish.
gender, especially for all the male stuff. So she went.
And she got elected president with that as being a
Yes,
goal.
she was insanely popular. Well, what happened? One thing that happened is she was a criminal. Okay, she stole billions of dollars from the treasury, and she got caught red-handed. Uh, People like my father-in-law and people in Argentina that knew that they were just robbing the country. She was what she was doing is she was giving bribes and stuff, but they were giving all these contracts to these construction companies, and then they were overcharging for these for all this infrastructure. And then a lot of the times, and she owned a lot of these companies, these infrastructure companies, and a lot of times they wouldn't even finish the projects. They would get the money and just take the money. And so they stole billions of dollars from the treasury. And they actually, I think they thought that they were invincible. Do you know when you can't, you're invincible? They got very sloppy, and they actually
Yeah.
found this black book that had it all recorded, all
Oh,
this theft recorded. And they were doing stuff like taking helicopters with money dollars to money to private locations. They caught them red-handed, and that hurt her a lot. The economy was never doing great under her either because she's a socialist. So in 2015, the economy wasn't good, but 2015 they elected the first non-Peronist person um, into power, named Macri. His first name Mauricio Macri. I'll just call him Macri.
Macri.
Macri. That he got elected in 2015 as the first non-Peronist. But he's really was a Peronist though. He was just a Peronist light. So you can find videos of Macri just praising Peron, but you know, but basically at that time you couldn't get elected if you didn't.
So you can get a light version of it,
Yes.
which
So
is like US politics, same kind of thing that you can't get elected without having some of the social justice and the socialism.
right, exactly. So he got elected in 2015, but he did absolutely nothing to change the situation. He did a few things, but he didn't cut spending. He had this policy of gradualism. So we're going to gradually change things. And guess what? He gradually never did anything. And the economy. So in 2001, the peso was 1-to-1 with the dollar.
The
Okay,
Argentinian peso.
was 1-to-1 with the dollar. So 1 peso is one. They kept it on par in the 90s with the dollar.
Was it locked to it, or
It
was
was
it?
locked. It was locked to it. Yes, 1-to-1 with the dollar. By the time Christina got out of office, I believe it was 18-to-1. So that's a pretty big devaluation. But then it went from, during Macri's term, it went from 18 to 40-to-1. 40 pesos, 40
Wow.
pesos to $1. Okay. So he was considered a disaster. And in 2019, the elections, the Kirchners won again. So the Kirchners, which I'm talking about, the ruling party of the last 20 years, won again in 2019. And here's the thing with her: she got caught red-handed. Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, the most powerful political figure of Argentina politics recently, got caught stealing billions of dollars from the treasury. She still has a huge fan base, though. It's wild. And the guy that ran in 2019 was actually a big critic of hers. So, but in Argentinian politics, if you are in office, you can't go to jail. So after she got caught red-handed stealing money, she ran for Senate, became a senator, so she didn't have to go to jail or face her crimes. And then in 2019, she became vice president of the country.
So the people still electing. They're still
Yeah,
putting
they kept putting this woman in power, even though
So people don't understand what she did to the currency? I mean, to go from 40 to 1, that's
well,
2.5 cents. So a peso, Argentinian peso, was worth a dollar. Then it became worth 2.5 cents.
Let me keep going though. So during the new president, his name is Fernandez, Alberto Fernandez. It went from there, and guess what it is per dollar? Do you have any idea?
It's worse? No, I don't know.
A little bit worse. You guess? It's 1,000 pesos per dollar.
1,000 pesos.
So it went from 1-to-1. It went from 1-to-1 20 something years ago to 1,000 pesos per dollar.
A tenth of a cent.
And here's another thing: the government lies about this. So they won't let you exchange at the market rate. So they have their exchange rate that the banks and stuff use, which is half. So they'll give you, let's say it's 940, the market rate. They'll give you like 400. For $1, they'll give you like 400 pesos. But that's because it's a fixed. That's because it's like a price control. You understand? The market exchange rate, what you can find in the market, the black market, is about 1,000-to-1. So nobody goes through the banks to exchange dollars. When I was in Argentina last year, to try to get dollars was so hard. You have to go to the black market to get dollars.
And people using dollars, though. The reason you want to get dollars is that's what the economy's.
Yeah. So Argentina, outside of the USA, has the most dollars out of any country
in circulation.
No, people save in dollars.
Okay.
So all the big transactions, if you're looking for houses, because the inflation is so high, goes from $1 to 1-to-1 to 1,000-to-1 in 20 years. And the last 10 years, it's just been a disaster, like I described.
So people buy a house with dollars? Like, yes. You buy a house cash. You have to do it cash?
Yeah, you have to use cash because nobody wants for that amount of much. It's too risky to.
You can't get a mortgage. How would you?
No, there's no mortgages. There's no mortgages. I think the longest mortgage is 2 years in Argentina.
It's too risky. You don't know what the rate would be.
Yeah, it's so bad. And
wow. So all major purchases? How about like a car?
Cars or dollars.
So car dealer will take dollars.
Yeah. So purchases.
Okay.
So that's when I talk about well.
All right, I didn't know how big. It's a bigger disaster than I knew about. So anyway,
it's even bigger than I'll explain. It's even bigger disaster than.
Yes.
This guy Fernandez was actually he was a Peronist, a big Peronist, but Kirchnerism was a kind of a different brand of Peronism, involved all the social justice stuff, because Peron was a traditional type of guy, he was like a traditional guy, and she was a huge social justice person, and he was a big critic of her because of her corruption and all that stuff. She was actually starting to lose some, power and influence, as you might imagine. So he was one of the big. So that's one reason they picked Alberto Fernandez, because he was a Peronist, basically had the same policies as her, but was a critic of her personally. But I think to consolidate power, he put her as vice president. So Argentina, let's fast forward to the coronavirus pandemic. Mercury was a failure. They reelect the Kirchners, basically. The coronavirus pandemic happens. Argentina had the worst lockdown in the world. Argentina had a terrible lockdown in a poor country that was the longest, or and they were literally putting people in jail for walking around. I think that at one point they had 40,000 people they had put into jail for just walking around in Argentina. It devastated the economy in a poor country. And in 2021, the midterm elections came up, and the Peronists got wiped out like they'd never had before in the 2021 election. So what happens was Cristina Fernandez starts blaming the president. She's the vice president. She's pretty popular still, She starts blaming the president, Fernandez, for this failure in 2021. And that's when Milei got elected. 2021, Milei gets elected.
He got his first office?
Okay, so I'll get into Milei in a little bit. So I'm just explaining the failure of the Peronist state.
Yeah, okay.
And so she starts blaming him. The economy goes from, remember that 40-1 thing to
1,000 to 1.
Yes. So the economy just is blowing up at this
Currency's gone, and they're printing. They're
printing money.
That's how
they're in so much debt. They basically Argentina. It's impossible to get a job. People in Argentina make like a couple $100 a month, stuff like that. The only way to get rich in Argentina really is to become a politician, or become one of the politicians' cronies, or become involved, or become an accountant or a lawyer. I mean, outside of that, it's almost impossible to make any money, have a decent living in Argentina.
Engineer, doctor.
No, engineers don't even make that much money. Doctors, I showed you that graphic. I don't know if you have it. It shows physicians. If you want to show that one, I don't know. If you don't have it, that's fine. I can explain it, but it's kind of nice to, if you have that one, I put it just to show. No, it's the physician one.
Okay.
Either way, I can explain it. If you don't have it right away. So in United States, doctors make about $300,000 a year. In Argentina, they make about $5,000 a year.
That's the one.
Yes. So look in Switzerland, it's $388,000 a year. At the very bottom is Argentina.
5,000.
Yeah. And I'm not going to get it, but I know physicians in Argentina. Okay. And yes, that they don't get paid a lot. So outside of the government apparatus, but the politicians are like all rich in Argentina. So, there is this distrust of rich people in Argentina, because the only way you can kind of get rich is get involved with the government in one way or another.
Corruption.
Yeah. So, let's go back. So this is what happens on the Peronist side and Argentina's economy and all that stuff.
So that's where we're at. This is
And we could
20. We're
talk
up to about 2019 or so.
and we can talk about Milei and his rise.
Yeah. So
So
let's get into.
to summarize, both the parties failed in Argentina. You had the Kirchner Peronist Party, disaster. And one of the things that really hurt him is Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner was in power during this last hyperinflation, because she could say like, oh, in 2015 it was so much better than it is now, when I was president. But then she becomes vice president and it's still terrible. So it really drags her down. You understand? Along the Kirchners down. So the Kirchners are very unpopular. Then Macri, it was a disaster on him because he didn't change anything. So both the center right party and the Peronist are not popular.
And
All
it's
right.
kind of Peronist and Peronist light is the way
Yes,
you
Peronist
described
and
it.
Peronist light parties are
They're
not.
all socialists, social justice,
Yeah. Right.
and printing money like Banshee.
Yes, exactly. So let's get into how Milei rises. Milei. Let
How we
me
get
give
Malay?
you
Should we
a
get
little.
Malay? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
let me give you a little background on what Milei. You talked about how he was a private sector, and during the 1989 hyperinflation, Milei decided to study economics because he was like, "What is going on here?" He started to study economics and became a free market type of guy. He was a big is it Robert Lucas, the supply side Nobel laureate winning supply side economist, and he liked Milton Friedman and that sort of thing. He was a libertarian, but not like an anarco-capitalist libertarian. So if you're familiar with the Market for Liberty, which is a basically
Yeah.
shows how it's this book that shows how everything the government does can be done in the market.
Okay.
It's a really profound book. It was written in 1970s. It still holds up. This guy, this was actually Doug Casey, who's an interesting figure that's involved in this. Doug Casey is a anarchist, libertarian that is a super rich investment guy. He's from America. He's been to 140 countries. He has houses in like 14 countries, and his favorite country in the world is Argentina, which is why I first got into Argentina before meeting my wife, because I was like, what? That's so fascinating. This guy's been every country in the world, almost every country in the world, and Argentina is his favorite country in the world, even though he's from America. Anyway, so he's an anarchist, and he was radicalized by this book called The Market for Liberty. Well, he showed it to this other guy named Jorge Trucco, who's a really kind of a fascinating character in Milei's story. And he read The Market for Liberty. He knows English and Spanish. He read it in English, and it made him an anarcho-capitalist. So he decides to translate The Market for Liberty into Spanish. And then so he translates it into Spanish, publishes it, and he got to know Milei at like economic conferences and stuff, and he gave that book to Milei, The Market for Liberty. Then that radicalized Milei. So Milei went from kind of just your prototypical kind of a free market guy to a radical libertarian. And then Milei got into Rothbard. He got into the whole Austrian stuff. He became a radical libertarian. Okay,
An
this is
Austrian
it.
economist.
Yes, I think he did like Austrian economics, but he wasn't the radical. He liked Hayek, for example, but he became this he really got into Rothbard, and he actually started reading Bob Murphy, if you know him, Chaos Theory. I mean, he got really anti-state. He started to hate the state. So Milei hates the state. You know that famous essay by Rothbard, "Do you hate the state?" Milei starts to hate the state profoundly. So
How
at
old
that,
was he then? This is
he was in his 40s.
okay.
He's
And
52
he
or
was
three.
a professor at the time. Right? He's an economics
Yeah,
professor.
he's always loved economics, and he does the professor thing, and he's been a chief economist at companies and stuff. So then he he teaches economics as well. So so Milei becomes this like radical libertarian because of this book called The Market for Liberty, which was translated into Spanish. And then he starts
But he was already, just I want to get like the background. He was already an economist, right?
he
Like
was
that's what he went.
already, yeah,
He
he was
has two
already an
masters.
economist. He already was pretty free market
Okay.
and stuff. He already knew Friedman and Hayek, but he didn't know any of the more radical stuff. And then he starts getting into Rothbard, and he just falls in love
Rothbard.
with Rothbard. And he names one of his dogs after Murray Rothbard. One of his dogs is named Murray after Murray
Murray.
Rothbard. Yeah.
Okay.
So he's got, and he loves Milton Friedman, and he is so well versed in economics. It's wild, as much as anybody. He even, I mean, he's an extreme scholar. I mean, he just knows, he knows some economists that I don't even know, and I'm very well versed in economics and theory and
And
stuff.
he's an author. He's written books on economics.
Yeah, so he's written some books on economics, basically sort of like the Ron Paul books that introduce people to the thing.
Basic.
So
And that comes from a teaching background. So he was teaching economics at
yeah,
college level.
but here's sort of the game changer. This guy named Fantino, who has a very popular program. I forget what it was called at the time, but he's a very popular TV host. Brings Milei onto TV around 2014. He brings Milei onto TV, and Milei immediately is like, take no prisoners, no diplomacy, saying crazy stuff that nobody had ever heard before. He's like the can I cuss it a little bit on this or
Yeah.
no?
Yes,
Okay.
you can.
So he's like, the currency is worse than shit. And he's like, you're putting a gun to my head. And he
And
would
he
go
say that
on.
on TV.
Yeah,
So you can
he
say
would
that
say
on.
the most wild stuff on TV. And it would cause, it was great for ratings because all the people on the set would be like, oh, because they're all Peronists. They've never heard
Yeah.
this stuff before.
And he's
And
right. And he's actually right.
He's right. And so like he was just great for ratings. They would put him on, and it would cause this huge stir, and everybody be talking about, oh, look what Milei says. Like he's saying all this crazy stuff.
So they want him back on TV.
So they keep, and he and Fantino became friends. And he starts explaining, I've seen episodes where he's explaining how bad Keynesianism is. He hates Keynesianism. He's explaining all this free market stuff. And for the first time ever, I was around at the time, and you started hearing about this kind of libertarian movement in Argentina. You started have heard of Argentina, the word, they call it liberal. Okay, liberal means freedom in Argentina.
The classic liberal.
Yeah, it hasn't been distorted like in the U.S. The word liberal means like freedom, and that was a bad word. When I met my wife in 2015, that was a bad word. And my father-in-law was pretty libertarian, but I mean, but he was a PhD economist, and that was about it, you know. And maybe some of the people,
he's an academic, right?
Yeah, and maybe some of the people that he influenced, but that's just not that much. And you started to see this like burgeoning, like still pretty small libertarian movement in Argentina that had never really existed before. And you started to see it, and the Milei, his Instagram account kept getting bigger and bigger, and you know, and he was just going on, and he was always right. He was talking about the things that nobody wanted to talk about. He was talking about inflation. He was talking about the central bank printing too much money. He was talking about, he would go to like politicians that were on the thing, and he would call them parasites to their face and stuff like that.
Yeah, he's a totally, I mean,
He
the little
was,
clips I've seen with him, he's
yeah,
wielding a chainsaw saying, I'm cutting everything.
but
Right.
but this was even before that. He was like, he would be like, there's a famous one. He's like calling this guy a parasite. You're a parasite. You're a parasite. You know, like this politician, and like, I mean, he would like the reactions of all the other people. Like there would be all these famous like celebrities on the show with him, on the show, the Fantino program, and they'd be like, oh, they'd be like crying and stuff because they would be so offended by what Milei, and it was just great television. So that's how Milei got popular. Okay, but he's a total outsider. He knew no politicians whatsoever. So basically, it was around 2019, and Malay's actually gaining popularity in the country because he's talking about stuff that people actually resonate with people. He's talking about inflation. He's talking about the government corruption and all this stuff. He's criticizing for Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner, all this stuff. By the way, I have a Malay shirt on.
Oh yeah, show everybody your shirt.
I
Yeah,
forgot to.
stand up here. Yeah, I say, okay, do I know anybody that's got a Malay T-shirt? That's the guy
Yeah,
we
I
should
had
get
it
on.
way before the election too, and I would, even if he lost, I would still be proud of the T-shirt.
Yeah, when did you start following him?
It's hard to say. I'll say 2018, but you know how time is, you can't remember, but
Yeah.
it might have been before that. But I was talking to him with my father-in-law in early 2019, so that's the first one that I can claim. But I think I was following, but I knew of him, so I was talking to him about it. And he actually was friends with my father on Facebook, or father-in-law on Facebook, and
Yes, your father knows him.
yeah,
Your father-in-law knows him.
yeah, he was super. Nobody, nobody
Yeah.
knew him.
They're both academic
They're
economists.
both academics, and they're both.
Yeah.
My father-in-law is like more like a Hayekian. He's not an anarchist like Milei. And he was an academic, and Milei was really trying to gain his own networking and become more well-known and make a movement. My father-in-law was more trying to be an academic and influence people in the academia and all that sort of thing. So they kind of went different paths. Milei kind of went the populist path, whatever. But anyways, so yeah, so I kind of forget where I was going, but the he starts on these programs and starts getting more popular. Well, this starts when the Kirchners took power. Alberto Fernandez in 2019. They started knowing this Milei guy is becoming a problem. Okay, he's becoming a problem to them. So there's this sort of thing, attempt to try to censor Milei. So there was an attempt to try to, they kind of wanted to censor Milei because he was becoming a problem, right? They have, this socialist government is whatever is in power, and he's kind of, and so that is actually when Milei, prior to 2019, Milei had never even considered politics. He hated politicians. I mean, he still hates politicians. He calls them the caste, which is true. They are a caste. Like I said,
it's a class. It's a
class. There is a neighborhood in Buenos Aires, which is gated off, and the kids are all super rich, and they've never even seen the outside world.
Oh, you can live inside the.
You can live inside. They have their own, it's like resplendent, yeah, the grocery stores and fancy shopping, and the
they
kids
probably use US dollars.
Yeah, and the kids have never even seen. A lot of those kids have never even seen the poverty outside. Like in Argentina too, it's like the poverty is like nothing you've ever seen. And so it's like beautiful beautiful buildings and architecture. Like I said, it was the richest country in the world, and you see that in Buenos Aires. The beautiful buildings, and they're all like over 100 years old. So you imagine going there at the turn of the century, and you have this beautiful city, and it's like a lot of the cities. It's not just Buenos Aires, and it's like built by great people. These just gorgeous buildings everywhere, and so you have that, and then you have these slums, and they have this, and there's like this little area in Buenos Aires. It's actually prime real estate where these people, like within a week or two, built these houses, and if it rains and stuff, a bunch of them have died. If it like rains hard and stuff,
they get flooded.
Yeah, they flood, and a bunch of them have died and stuff. That's how bad they are. But there's these slums, and there's slums.
So it's like abject poverty and these super elite, wealthy, connected people.
Exactly.
In the same city.
Exactly. And so, and a lot of the middle class has lost their businesses, and because I'll give you an example. I'm not going to name names or anything, but there was a physician that to show what happened in Argentina, there was a physician that was running a successful business and was middle class, working like 14 hours a day, working really hard, sent her family to her kids to nice schools where they could get educated. One of the machine breaks in her, because she uses machines for her practice. One of her machine breaks that she took a big loan out to get. One of her machine breaks because of the mercantilism and everything, and the impossibility of giving stuff outside of the country. This physician could not get the parts to fix her machine.
Like you can't import it. You
She
can't.
couldn't import
It's
it.
not
She couldn't
made in
find
Argentina.
it. Could not made in Argentina. She couldn't find a way to import it. So guess what? She goes from middle class, where she's sending her kids to nice schools, to abject poverty. And that is the story of Argentina. There's a million stories like that, where these middle class people just go from, middle class, have nice jobs, to poverty.
So a lot of people know the story. So just hearing a few tidbits of that, like for Javier to get elected, it's because the majority of people now see what's happening. They recognize Peronist as a bad thing. Socialism doesn't work.
Yeah. So to go up on the story a little bit more, so in 2019, Javier Milei decides, there's this guy named Juan Espert. He is kind of a classical liberal. He ran for president as kind of like a third party libertarian. He's not nearly as radical as Milei, excuse me. He's not nearly as radical as Milei. And he only got like 2% of the vote in, I think it was 2019. So he runs, and then he gets Milei into running. So they Milei is they're threatening him with censorship. This guy convinces him to get into politics. Milei's like, so Milei gets convinced to get in politics around 2019, 2020. He runs for Congress in 2021, and he's expected to get like 1% of the vote. And he ended up getting enough percent of the vote to get elected. And I remember when this happened, and it was this whole like groundbreaking wave. It was like the biggest news in Argentina is that Milei got elected.
To their Congress.
Yeah.
So they have a Congress. So they have a Senate
like
and a House, or
yeah, they have a Senate and a House, basically similar to the U.S. And he got elected
president and a president, vice president.
Yeah, president.
They have a Supreme Court too. Just kind
they
of
do. Yeah. They
so
do.
they're kind of modeled after the
like they modeled after the U.S. and it was good for a while, but they changed the constitution to make it more Peronist though, so it's not as good. But so he got elected. That was a huge. I remember at the time when he got elected, and he was all over Argentinian media. It was like this whole this whole like groundbreaking thing at the time that he got elected. I remember that, and so he decides to run for president. So here's a cool thing he did, Keith. So he hates politicians. I mean, this guy, he hates the state.
He doesn't look like a politician.
No, he's not. So he became a politician a few months before running for Congress and getting elected. So you know what he does? When he gets into office, he starts raffling off his salary. So he gets like a subscription, like email list and stuff. And he starts making these huge like demonstrations of him raffling off his salary to one lucky winner.
To his
he would raffle off his salary as a Congress
to anyone who applied.
Well, yeah, people that were on his email list. He would raffle off, and he would make it a big scene and stuff. So that made him even more popular. You imagine, like everybody wanted to be on his email list and stuff, so they could his subscriptions. So he could like rap, and then he would be sending them like all this like stuff, and so he became even more popular. How great of a thing is like publicity stunt is that, Keith? I mean, everybody knew about it, so he became really even more popular in Argentina. And then
as a Congress, so he was in their house.
Yeah, he was in their house, and he was doing this stuff. He was like the one guy sticking up against inflation and making a big deal, and so a lot of people started to like him because
What
of that.
district was he in? Like,
He
he's
was Buenos
representing
Aires.
one district? Buenos
Buenos
Aires,
Aires,
okay.
yeah.
Which is the most populated
Yeah, so
area.
it's like proportional. So it's kind of like how New Hampshire does it with their 400 state reps. He got 17% of the vote when he was supposed to get like 1%, and which got him elected. Which, I mean, which was shocking. Like I said, it shocked the political system at the time.
You're gonna have to explain that because most people don't know what New Hampshire is either.
Oh, yeah. So in New Hampshire, we have 400 state reps. So if you have like a town of like 10,000 people, they might elect 4 state reps. So it's the people that have the most votes win. So you might have 8 people running, and the top 4 get elected to the state house in New Hampshire.
Okay.
So yeah,
And
in Argentina,
Argentina's
it's similar to that, and it's almost like it's not closed. It's not a two-party system in Argentina. They have many different parties.
and so
So
he could start a new party, this La Libertad
yeah,
party.
yeah, La Libertad Avanza, he started right before he ran in 2021. And it was a coalition of like pro-liberty people. So libertarians and some other pro-liberty type people. Maybe like
And he
conservatarian.
started that party, La Libertad Avanza.
Yeah, yeah, he
Yeah.
started that party. And him
That
and that
means, freedom moves forward, right?
yeah, basically.
Freedom.
And he and that Espert guy that got him actually had to break. They got I guess they quit liking each other and they broke. And that guy had a party that was similar named, but then Milei rebranded it and everything. And anyways, so
So
they
it's a
broke.
different well, it's interesting. That's a quite different system where you can
Yeah,
he come up with a party, get elected to Congress, and 2 years later, he gets elected to president with this brand new party. It's like, we watch the Libertarian Party's been
I
around for
mean,
50 years and hasn't really done anything
to be
nationally.
fair, it was a meteoric rise, and so
Yeah.
like so he gets elected, and so it was like a year ago. You whenever Milei would go out, because of his publicity and stuff, he's brilliant he's a lot of people don't understand. They think he's kind of crazy and stuff, but he's very emotional and passionate, true, but he is a brilliant marketer. He is brilliant at getting publicity and all that stuff, and that's really what he does, like with the raffling off of his salary and stuff. And he did other things, and um,
And his in-your-face style
his
works great.
in-your-face style, he maintained that the entire time, right up until like he had to try to get right up until the general election, he started to moderate from that. But so or the runoff election, he really tried to tone down and stuff.
But
But
you get the feeling watching him like that is him, right? He's always been like that.
yeah,
He's
no,
just
he's
being himself.
extremely, and he hates the. I mean,
It's
like
not
I
an
said,
act.
Keith, the Kirchner stole billions of dollars from the Treasury. Okay, like
Mhm.
imagine knowing that, and then they're in power, and everybody loves them, and they're just robbing the country blind. Christina Fernandez de Kirchner is the biggest owner in the country. She owns like
She's
almost
one that
she
was
owns an enormous amount of the hotels. She owns like all the casinos in the country. Okay.
and she's
Can you imagine?
president or vice
And
president.
she became president, and she never was prosecuted. Because imagine the hatred you would have if you knew that. I mean, this is the biggest confirmed fraud in the history of the world. And by the way, one of the I don't like Google at all, but one of the cool things Google did is after she was caught, they called her a criminal. So if you looked her up on Google, it wasn't politician, it was criminal. So because she was,
Even Google had to admit it.
oh
She
yeah,
wasn't
yeah. I
she
mean, she
no
was
matter
so
how socialist she was, they still had to admit it at
yeah,
one
she
point.
was so bad.
Did she ever
And
go to jail?
she's not in jail, but she did get a 6 years prison sentence. That's it, only 6 years.
But they didn't put her in.
Well, she's vice president. Like I said, when
Oh.
you're in politics, you can't go to jail.
She's still vice president
Yeah,
until December 10th.
up until September 10th, she's going to be vice president. So
December 10th, right?
it's December 10th, she'll be vice president, and then we'll see. She's appealing it, but I think with Milei, I think she will have to serve that sentence. So, which will be great. She should get life in jail, though, for sure. She should never see the light of day again. She's a criminal and a despicable human being.
So maybe Milei can take. So all this is happening in 2 years. I mean, this is amazing. So I think I
Well, she
understand the background now. So Milei comes in 2019,
Yeah, so he gets
gets member
elected.
of the House.
He gets elected in 2021. Remember, the Peronist got elected in 2019. In 2021,
Okay.
they kind of got wiped. They got wiped out in the midterms. You remember this was COVID. They had
Oh,
this super long lockdown that just devastated the economy, and
and they were
people.
bad. The whole country's bad. Is
Yeah,
Argentina divided into states? Like, do the states
no,
have
it's
different
provinces.
authority?
N-
And they
It's no, unfortunately, it's
okay.
provincial.
So
So
it's all one state, really,
it's one state. The
in the
provinces
in
do
the way.
have some, but it's unfortunately they didn't adopt the state model, and I think Malay would love to adopt it, but um, so that's it. In the interior of the economy, and there's a province called Cordoba, which is very anti-Kirchner and anti. It's the most anti-Peronist province, and it's one of the more populated. It's like the Texas or it's like the New Hampshire of Argentina, where it's very anti. If you zoom in, it's more. I don't know if they're if you, but in the interior of the country, the farm. It's more farmers. Yeah, I see Cordoba there. Um, they
Yeah,
are.
Cordoba.
Yeah,
Here's
yeah.
Cordoba.
So if you look, you can see that Buenos Aires is on the eastern side of the country.
Yeah.
Buenos Aires, Argentina has about 45 million people. Buenos Aires, I think the metropolitan area is about 15 million. And then my wife is from La Plata. If you look just south of Buenos
Oh, yeah.
Aires, La Plata.
It's another place that
Yeah,
recognize the name, right?
it's yeah. I was actually at that castle a year ago, but or that church a year ago. Beautiful place, but um, that is almost the majority of the people in the country are in that area over there. Not a lot of the people, I wouldn't say the majority, but it's a huge portion of the people, and they dominate the whole political thing of Argentina. But if you look at Cordoba and Santa Fe and some of these other provinces, these are farming provinces. These are people that actually produce things. These are people that are, and the government just robs them blind. Okay. The government robs Cordoba and all these places. The people that actually produce a lot of the wealth, they rob them blind. And they hate the Peronist. Okay. So you have this dynamic, you have this big city kind of dynamic in Argentina. You have all these other places that don't like the Peronist, but so
And this is a populated area, Cordoba.
yeah, Cordoba is I think it's maybe the second most populated province in Argentina. My father lives in Santa Fe there in that province, but so those provinces always vote against.
Your father-in-law.
Yeah, my father-in-law. Oh, those provinces always vote against like the Peronists and the Kirchners and all them. But they just never can overtake the Buenos Aires and all that stuff.
They don't have the numbers, so
They
that's what
don't have
democracy does.
Yeah.
Yeah, 15 million. You said Buenos Aires. Is that the province? Buenos
Yeah,
Aires
well, the
province.
province is even more than that. Yeah, the Buenos so La Plata is actually the capital of the Buenos Aires province, although Buenos Aires is the capital of the country. So my wife's town is 70% government workers. So this is
70. Yeah, you can
yeah
imagine how that economy
yeah
operates. That's La Plata, right?
yeah. So that's La Plata. It's a gorgeous play. I mean, It's interesting because you have it's all beautiful, but there's graffiti everywhere. So every building is graffitied and all that stuff. And it's ugly graffiti. It's not even artistic. It's ugly crap. So Argentina's like that. You have these gorgeous buildings, and then they're on the ground level there's graffiti. So
Yeah, I mean, what Google Maps picks is pretty nice.
well, no, it's I mean, go there and you'll be kind of shocked. Um, La Plata is interesting because it was actually designed. It's a perfectly. It was designed before people lived there because it had this thing where they wanted to take the power from Buenos Aires and put it into La Plata. So it was actually one of these cities that's perfectly designed. So it's like every street is 100 meters apart. They're numbered, so you know exactly where you are. It's kind of interesting in that way. So it's one of
Mhm.
the few cities that was planned pre and like every and
And then
it's
built
like perfectly. You could look at a map and it's like it's yeah it's interesting because it was
built to
designed.
design.
Yeah, yeah. The roads and stuff are perfectly 100 meters apart, and then there's a park. Yeah, it's people that study how cities are formed look at La Plata because it's look how perfectly it is as far as the roads and then they have the diagonals coming through that and
It's
see
like
that.
Disneyland built a
Yeah,
city.
yeah, right, yeah. So
And is it a port? I see all these.
um, I I'm not sure,
You can
but
see the whole Buenos Aires area
they do have
is
some nice
built in
port.
this beautiful bay. That's probably how
Right.
it's formed.
Yeah. Yep. 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 So yeah, Argentina is got everything. I mean, it's got some of the biggest lithium reserves. Natural resource wise, it's maybe the most rich in the whole, one of the most rich in the whole world. It is.
It's probably the only reason they're even surviving at all with these
Yeah,
terrible politics.
like the farmers and they actually have to import. The economy is so bad they actually have to import food, even though they could feed over two if they wanted to. They could feed over 200 million people in Argentina. They could fit in, but they have to import food because of the socialists and all that stuff. So, and gorgeous. I mean, they've got mountains. It's just a beautiful. I
And you
mean,
see this area along
beautiful.
the
It's got like Colorado
Chilean.
mountains. They have a huge glacier in Terra del Fuego. It is just Mendoza has some of the best wine in the world. They've got great skiing in Argentina. Um, I mean, they have it's just like it is some of the most beautiful, picturesque everything in Argentina. It just says everything you could like. There's a famous quote. It's like you have I can't remember. You have Europe, America, and then Japan, which nobody can explain how Japan is rich, and then Argentina, because nobody can explain how Argentina is poor. And they're also very educated. Argentines are very educated. They have a very educated workforce, very educated.
So
Uh,
it's not education, it's not natural resources,
it's
it's
because
not
there's no yeah.
ports, it's not sea access,
It's every
it's
they have great rivers.
socialism.
They have great river access everywhere. I was in Rosario, which is by the way Messi's hometown, home city, and they have this beautiful huge river that's like bigger than the Mississippi River, which they ship stuff. I mean, it is like perfect.
But you
Absolutely
can
perfect.
still bad politics, bad economics can
Yeah,
still
there's
screw it
and
up.
culturally it's a beautiful country. I mean, they have
Mhm.
so many adorable customs they do. Adorable customs and beautiful things they do. There's still a good family life in Argentina. There's a lot of going for it that it could turn around, and they're
So
beautiful
it might
people.
turn around. So do you
Yeah.
think Malay can turn it around? That's kind of the
So
question.
I'll get a little bit into this. So yeah, so it is so has so much potential. I mean, so much potential. So yeah, so Malay, it was like a year ago. I noticed that there was something going on in Argentina, whereas Malay went to southern Argentina, Tierra del Fuego and Ushuaia, which has always been a very Peronist place. They take a lot of government subsidies and stuff, and he gets out and he gets mobbed. He's starting getting mobbed by people. Like you go out, there's like thousands of people around him.
Like they want what he's talking about.
Yes,
They know who he is.
yeah, and then so you start seeing this where everywhere he's going, he gets mobbed. he goes anywhere, even in these he's starting to get mobbed everywhere. And it's like, what is going on? And then they start doing these polling, and it shows that Milei is more popular than the other two parties. And I
And
was like,
he's
a
really
year
just
ago.
a representative from
Yes,
one district of Buenos
because
Aires.
he announced he's running for president, and you see
Oh,
these.
this is okay.
Yeah, he's
This is
about a
after he's
year.
running. So
Yeah,
okay.
he after getting into Congress for the 2023 election, maybe not long after he announced he's running for president.
So did he have one term in their
Yeah,
house?
he's only been in there one term, I think.
How long's their term?
I can't remember for the House. It
Sorry,
might be 2 to 4 years.
2 to
I
4. But
Yeah.
it's a couple years. It's
Yeah,
2021.
not terribly long. He has not. I mean, he's a total outsider. In fact, he
Yeah.
knew no politicians. Doug Casey, who he's kind of central to this story I was bringing up. He said that there was another libertarian named Bill Bonner.
Who's Doug Casey?
Oh, he's that guy I told you that he's the international, very rich investor guy that's a libertarian.
Okay.
He's all over YouTube. He wrote the #1 financial book of all time called
Okay.
Crisis Investing. He made millions or billions doing worldwide investing, and
Okay.
he's
So
very
he's
prom.
following Malay.
Yeah, but he like he said he's been to 140 countries. He has houses in like a dozen, but his favorite
Okay.
country in the world is Argentina. That's where he lives.
Argentina. Okay. I remember
Tried to,
now.
he tried to start a gulch in Argentina.
Gulch Gulch
Yeah, in
from
Argentina.
Atlas. That's an Atlas Shrugged
Yeah,
reference
like
for
I said,
people who don't know.
because the country he lives out in he lives out in the countryside. So like I said, outside of Buenos Aires, it's pretty empty in Argentina. So he lives out where it's pretty empty. And it's got all these really cute towns. I was there. But there's outside of Buenos Aires, it's not. Cordoba is a little bit of a. Cordoba is a big town. There's some big towns. Cordoba is a big city, maybe the second biggest city. They have Rosario and they have Rosario, and there's a few other cities and stuff. But
And they're different. It's Buenos Aires is really the center of the government.
yes, Buenos Aires is the capital and where most people live. So they always complain. In fact, some of a bunch of the Cordoba people ran against the Peronists in this election because there was like 5 major parties ran. There was a socialist.
So you can have 5 major parties. That's why they have to have
the debates were interesting. So basically what happens is that so Milei starts running, and like I said, he's starting to get mobbed and stuff everywhere. And you notice that
last year, right?
Yeah, last year. And I just saw it. I was like, wow, there's something going on in Argentina, because he's starting to get mobbed wherever he's going, And then he starts running for office, and he's polling really well. It's like, wow, is he really polling that well? And so they have Argentina basically reruns. What they do is they have a primary election, kind of like the U.S., but they do it all at one time. So they do it all instead of like going state by state, they do it all at one time, if that makes sense. And the winner, basically the party that gets the most votes, their candidates get the most votes, wins the primary. And if they win the primary, they have always, besides one time, and that was a weird exception, won the general election.
So what's the difference between the primary and the general? Or they're picking the primary for the party?
They're picking who is going to run in the parties. Does that make sense? So they're
well, you can win the primary for one party. What do you mean by win the primary? Explain that.
I'll give you an example. Massa, who, if you're following this at all, he was running against Milei. He's like the Peronist that ran against Milei. Okay.
But in a different party.
Yeah, he was in the Peronist, basically the Peronist party. They called it.
So you're gonna have to explain to me what you mean by a primary when there's 2 different people in 2 different parties running against each other.
Yeah, so just like for example, the primary, Okay, so you have the Republicans, and they nominate a candidate, right?
Yeah.
They go in New Hampshire and Iowa, they vote on who they're going to nominate, and if you win New Hampshire and Iowa, you're likely going to win the nomination for the Republicans or Democrats. So Argentina doesn't do that. basically the primaries were who are they going to nominate for each of these parties. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but
So
is there all one primary?
yeah, so it was all at one time.
Does everybody vote for every party?
You can vote for one candidate in any of the parties. So I'll give you an example. Milei was the only person running for La Libertad Avanza. Okay,
So
so
he wins.
he wins his party, but they all vote at the same time. So Massa, who is the Peronist running, his party had, it was Massa who was, and then this other socialist guy, a total like communist guy that was running against him to take the Peronist party basically. So it was Massa and this other guy, and Massa during the primary Massa won. It's like
He won
Trump.
his party.
Yeah, he won his party. It's like Trump and DeSantis. If Trump dominates DeSantis, so Trump. So Massa, he's the Peronist Kirchner guy. He won his party.
Okay.
And he became the nominee for his party for the general election. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes. The other candidate was this Patricia Bullrich won her party. She was like the center right party. They're like the Macri. I was talking about Macri. She was in the Macri government. She was
it's like a Peronist light.
She was the Peronist light.
Okay.
And she won her nomination. But the thing is if Milei got the most votes overall.
Oh, so I see what you're saying. If you get the most votes, even just within your party,
yes,
you probably still will win the presidency.
Yeah. So Bullrich got like 24. I can't remember 25%. No, she got like 27% of the vote or something like that. Massa, maybe it's 28. She got during this primary, which is basically like the general election before the general election.
But the primaries are all open. I'm starting to understand it. So
yeah,
you
it's
can
all
vote.
Open.
You can vote in one, but you can pick whichever one you want.
Yeah, you can pick whichever one you want.
Okay.
And this was in August, by the way. Massa, the Peronist, did terrible. Massa got like 27% of the vote.
So the majority of the people are figuring this out.
Yeah, they're starting to figure it out. So Massa got 27% of the vote. Bullrich got 28% of the vote, and Milei got 30% of the vote. So Milei got the most votes of anybody. And if you get the most, and if your party combined with all the candidates gets the most votes of anybody, you almost always win.
The general.
Yes.
So what is the general is the same parties, but there's only one person in each party.
Yeah, there's only one person running.
Okay.
It's the nominee or whatever.
Okay.
So the five major parties was the socialist, they're actual socialist / communist. You had this party, the Cordoba is so independent. They hate the Kirchners so much that they had a guy running named Schiaretti. And then you had Bullrich, which was like Macri, center right, Peronist light.
Center right.
And then you had the Peronist, and then you had Milei. And the debates were awesome. Like the debate, they had all, unlike the US where you only have the top two, they had all five of those. They had the socialist, they had Massa, the Peronist, they had Milei, they had Schiaretti, who was the
that would be fun. So the debates are not combined by, it's not one party, it's all the parties.
Yeah, so if you are polling over 1%, you get in the debates, which is
and everybody
isn't that
participates.
Awesome? Yeah, isn't that awesome?
You don't have a Biden who people say no, you better not participate.
Yeah, and it was so great to watch it, and it was so fun to watch the debates.
I saw you had a watch party at the Shell in New Hampshire.
Yeah, but I was interviewed. My first interview about Milei was we were discussing the second debate before the general election. Yeah. So it was like all of these candidates, and it was so interesting, the dynamics of it, because
okay, so they had this debate, And
Yeah. So
it's the 5 winners of the 5
yeah,
major
so
parties.
Milei wins, gets the majority, or not the majority, but gets the most
Most
votes. And
votes.
this is just shocking, the whole, because Milei was actually polling, he got 30%, but he's actually polling at 20%. So he gets 30% of the vote.
30%.
He wins. And this just blows up Argentina
And
because
this
he
is a
won.
guy who just got elected to his
Just
first
got,
political
yeah,
office the year before,
he's been
and
in
he's just in the
politics like 2
House,
years. In
and
politics
he's
like
the
2
House.
years.
And he
And
never
he,
had another office? Did he ever hold any
no,
other?
he's never been in politics before that. He
Okay.
hates the politics. In fact, he never wanted to be part of it because he hates it so much, and just
Wow.
blows up Argentina. It's like, what the hell just happened? This outsider, this guy, this total outsider, just won, and he is an outsider. Like, he knew no, like I said, Doug Casey, who we were talking about, he said that because Doug Casey and Milei know each other, he said that Milei knew no politicians.
He
No,
didn't even know any.
new politicians, and
Not his circle.
it was actually another libertarian in Argentina, because a lot of libertarians seem to like Argentina that from other countries. That guy actually introduced Milei to Macri, President Macri,
Okay.
because he knew nobody. And so what happened was, Milei wins the primary. I mean, just blows up Argentina politically. Like, what the hell just happened? And so they go into the generals, and actually Massa, and there's probably a lot of fraud, and who knows what happened. The Shell watch party that we're talking about, which is my community center, we had a watch party for so how it works is you need to get 40. If you get 45% of the vote, you win outright.
This is in the general.
In
So
the
now the
general, if you
5
get,
parties.
because there's 5 parties, if you get 45% of the vote, you win outright. So you just win. You're going to become president. If you get 40% of the vote and you win by over 10%, if you win by over 10%, you win.
Okay.
So you're going to become president. But beyond that, if you don't get either of those, it goes to a runoff.
Okay. So they take the top.
All the other, the top two. So all the other ones are eliminated. Yeah,
okay.
all the other parties are eliminated. It's the top 2 candidates. Well, everybody was expecting Milei to win, at least get the majority of votes in the general election, but he didn't. Milei got 30%. Massa got 37%, which is the Peronist Kirchner evil. He's
the insiders.
Yeah, this guy is the biggest creep you've ever met. I mean,
he got 37%.
He got 37, and then Bullrich got like 24, 25%, and then Schiaretti, this guy from Cordoba, got almost 8%. So, which it was.
So they had to have a runoff.
It was discouraging at the time, because it was just like, why did Milei not even get the majority? There was a lot of fraud. But
so I think, is there vote cheating, or do you?
Yeah, they don't. They have
a.
Oh yeah, because it's easy to do in Argentina now. They don't have they don't have it. It's not electronic. It's all ballots. But how they do it is, if you tear a ballot, there's so many ways that ballots can be invalidated. Okay. And there were some places, some small towns and stuff, where Massa got 100% of the vote.
100. They just reported 100%.
Yeah. So it was good in a way, because it taught Milei that we really need to focus on fraud and make sure that we're, and he knew that too. But so how it turned out is Massa got 37% of the vote. Milei got 30% of the vote. He didn't increase at all from the primary, which was extremely weird. I guarantee you they took at least 1 or 2%.
It doesn't sound possible, because you'd assume that everyone in the primary that voted for him would vote for him.
It was extremely weird that he didn't increase his vote total, and then Massa increased his vote total by 10%. It was very weird.
So there's only 2 possibilities. The other 3 parties that are now out, all those people voted for the Peronists.
Yeah, but the majority of people did not vote for the Kirchners, which was also kind of encouraging. So Bullrich, the center right Macri, party got 24. The Cordoba guy who ran in as his own party from Cordoba, like I said, Cordoba is a very independent place. He got like 8%. The socialist Miriam Bregman got like 2.5%. So she was like she's just a communist, an outright communist. And she will admit that. But
the only way the numbers could work the way you said is that every single person voted for the Peronist, the insiders. Nobody additional voted for Milei. For him
yeah,
to get 30% in the general
yeah,
and the primary, right?
and
Which is impossible.
one of the people that ran against Bullrich in the primary was kind of she was more Peronist than even Bullrich. And what the theory is that those people that this guy, he's the mayor of Buenos Aires, and he does a lot of deal making, and he's kind of and the theory is that all of those people went to Massa. They also have a higher, more people vote, and so it's mandatory voting in Argentina. So you have to vote from like 18 to 70. You have to vote, otherwise you get fined. Actually, it's like you have to vote.
They fine you.
Yeah, it's mandatory voting. So more people voted in the general. So maybe Massa got more of those votes. Oh, they also were they were doing corrupt things like paying old people to vote.
Yeah, I can imagine what happened.
They were doing every trick in the books.
It's more corrupt than the United States, and we all know what elections are like here.
Well,
okay, so now you have a runoff.
You have a runoff, and basically, what Milei had to do, and like I said, Milei was kind of this bombastic guy, and then in that from October to the election was October 22nd, the general, and then the runoff election was November 19th. So like,
so it's only 1 month in between the.
Oh, only one. So what Milei had to do that 1 month was get Bullrich's and Schiaretti's people to join his side, if that makes sense.
And apparently he did.
Yeah, and he actually, because Milei is a really good guy and he's honest. Basically, Bullrich hates the Kirchners because they're so corrupt, and
the Kirchners are the Peronists.
Yeah, like the Massa people. And Massa is the biggest creep you've ever met. Like if you listen to this guy in the debates or anything, this guy is, holy crap, he's a criminal. He made millions trafficking drugs. And I mean, he's just a criminal.
Wow. Sounds pretty bad, but you've never been to the board meeting on my condo, so.
Oh yeah. So like basically Bullrich decided to totally embrace Milei. And Macri, and part of it is because I think that, there is this, Argentina's so bad right now. I think she had this patriotism. I think it was actually, she had some patriotism to the country, whereas she's like, this economy is going to blow. This thing is going to blow. We cannot afford another 4 years of these people,
So they end up endorsing Milei?
Yeah, so Bullrich endorsed Milei, Macri endorsed Milei, Schiaretti, the Cordoba guy who he basically endorsed Milei. I really liked his vice presidential candidate, and he really liked Milei. So he basically endorsed Milei too. Here's the thing, though. Milei had no money. So Milei had no money, and Massa was actually using public funds to promote his campaign. So I have a friend that's in, by the way, this is his company. He created these shirts, and he was on the Milei campaign, and so I bought one of his shirts. But
I think this is one of the graphics you sent me.
Yeah.
This is with the money.
Yeah. So this is public dollars that they spent. Massa spent, and this is in peso, but I don't know what the exchange rate is because they have a million exchange rates. But Massa spent so much money, and Milei had no money.
And this is public, that you can get public money for your campaign.
Yeah, basically. And Schiaretti's the governor. Schiaretti was the governor of Cordoba. He's the governor of Cordoba. so he used some, but um, so Milei had no money, and so in that month, they like Brazil hates Milei. Lula is the president of Brazil is a socialist. All of these people were trying to beat Milei, and they got Massa got all of these consultants from all these other countries, these socialist countries that don't like freedom and stuff, and they basically did this smear campaign for a month. And like what I said with the guns and stuff, Milei was a pundit for like I said for 8 years, and when he was a pundit, he was like a pure libertarian. So he advocated for selling of a market for organs, organs,
Mhm.
market for organs, which for libertarians, that's like we believe we own our own bodies and we should be able to do that. But that's a huge, like when you're running for president, that's rough. And Milei also has been an advocate of gun ownership, and that is like taboo in Argentina. So they basically ran these huge, like massive smear campaigns on Milei.
And they
And
can pick out some of his piles. He's got
yeah,
lots of to
yeah,
pick.
because he's got been saying this stuff for 10 years. So they were like, and so my friend Joram, who's an American that lives in Buenos Aires, and he was on the Milei campaign, was telling me that he actually thought Milei was going to lose because it was like you 10, like everywhere you saw was an anti-Malay smear. Like if you were on YouTube,
Yeah.
you saw a smear ad about Malay. If you were on television, smear ad about Malay. Malay had no money. Malay ran like a social media campaign. And by the
Yeah.
way, if you Malay would go out in public, like to all these cities, and there would be tens of thousands of people. Did you ever see any of
Yeah.
those, Keith?
No.
Where he would go. So he would, what part of his campaign, what he did is he would go to, he would announce he was coming to all these cities and stuff like La Plata. My mother-in-law saw him in La Plata, um, in Mar del Plata, and all these places, and Cordoba, and he would have tens of thousands of people there. It would be these. It was like nothing you'd ever seen, Keith. It was like bigger than Trump
Wow.
rallies. It was. He would go there, and you should look him up
At
on
different places and
everywhere. Like
yeah.
everywhere he went, he would just get mobbed. It would be all as far as you can see. People wearing, they would have their Malay flags, and that's where you saw him with the chainsaw and all that stuff. He would have his
Oh yeah.
chainsaw, and he would be carrying a dollar with his face on it, and he would be doing all these public stunts and all this stuff. And
Yeah, I found one of them. So this
yeah,
wasn't after his election. This is part of his campaign
yeah, this
rally.
is part of his campaign rally,
I
and
did see this. This is
yeah,
when I first noticed him. This was the
yeah.
first picture I saw him.
And he was great. You people would be dressed as the Libertad Avanza logo is in a lion. It's, how the donkey for Republic or donkey for
Okay.
Democrats,
Oh yeah.
elephant Republicans. Theirs is a lion. You see in the background there
Mhm.
on the behind him, you see that lion. It says
Oh yeah,
that's a
up here.
lion. And so people would be dressing up as lions. They would be, I mean, there would be these huge parties, you know,
Mhm.
like surrounding Melee. I mean, maybe you can find another one, Keith, of
Yeah, go ahead.
if you can
I'll
find
look.
another picture of it, you can see. I mean, there'd be thousands of people surrounding him, like tens of thousands. And it'd be like these. It's like, whoa, what is going on? And it bigger, more passionate than Trump rallies. And that's what he did. He had no money, but he ran this like campaign like this, and all of these young, who supported him was all the young people. All the young people loved Malay. It's like the majority of young people, like under 22, loved Malay. Maybe 25. They all supported Malay. It was the older people that he had to try to win over. So, that was his campaign. So basically, he was running a very grassroots campaign, and then Massa had all this money and was putting all these ads, ad after ad after ad, all smearing, lying about Malay, just lying about him. So I actually thought he was going to lose, you know. My friend Joram made me believe he was going to lose. Um, So when the runoff election happened, I was in tears when I saw that he was going to win. I mean, I was actually in Austria at the time, and otherwise we would have probably had a party at the Shell. But I was in Austria at the time, and it was so exciting because the exit polls had Milei winning, and I was like, "What the heck?" So you saw early in the day that the exit polls had Milei winning, and I was just I was just it was I'll never forget the day. It was just such an incredible day. And it really, and here's the thing, you remember you talking about Cordoba, Keith,
Yeah.
and Cordoba had record turnout. So they had record turnout, and it would look like, well, 75% of the people in Cordoba are going to vote for Milei. And that was like, holy crap. He actually might win this thing because Cordoba has record turnout, and some of these other places that were Mendoza had record turnout. So these anti Kirchner places just came out for Milei. And guess what? And it turned out that Milei won in a landslide.
Yeah.
And
What was the
he got
runoff numbers?
56% of the vote. Massa got like 44% of the vote, and
It's,
Milei got the highest percent of the vote anybody's ever gotten.
in an Argentinian
Yeah.
runoff.
To be fair, Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner would have gotten way more, but she won in the first round with 54%. But I mean, yeah, look at those rallies.
You can see the crowds in these
Yeah, the
rallies.
crowds are just, enormous. And I mean, like they love, like his followers love him, just absolutely love him. Just some, because he's a good man. He's an honest man. He does not lie. He's got some flaws, which we can talk about if you want. But
You can save that for another
yeah,
show. So I just want to
but
understand, like, what really happened here that he got.
yeah,
It's amazing.
but
It's an amazing thing.
yeah, it's an amazing story that this guy rose from nothing and had no money and ended up getting elected. And he's so going forward, he gets elected in a shocking. He gets, up until like a week or so before, Keith, the betting markets had him losing. So he was expected to lose, and then I don't know what happened, but he basically, Bullrich, Macri, they all really started to embrace Milei. I think part of it was really patriotism. I really think part of it was patriotism, because they were really worried. That's his vice president.
The vice.
Yeah, and so he got almost all of Bullrich's and Schiaretti voters. So
that's how you get to that number. So.
Yeah, so he got 56% of the vote.
And he still hasn't combed his hair. I'll give him that.
Yeah, no,
they did make him put a tie on.
Oh, he always wears a tie. He always if you see him on his public when he's on the when he was 8 years ago, if you see him on it, he always has a tie on and stuff. That's part of his.
I guess he is a professor.
Yeah, that's part of his thing, but he always has the wild hair and the antics and all that stuff. So, so basically the country's in terrible shape, and it's going to hyperinflation.
And he's going to cut it, and that's
which will be like Venezuela in 2014. And Milei has a huge challenge ahead of him. So he has a huge challenge. He needs to cut spending. Have you seen the Fuera thing where he's all the different agencies? It's super famous.
Ministerio de Turismo y Deporte, afuera. Ministerio de Cultura, afuera. Ministerio de Ambiente y Desarrollo Sostenible, afuera. Ministerio de las Mujeres y Género y Diversidad, afuera. Ministerio de Obras Públicas, afuera, aunque te resistas. Ministerio de Ciencia y Tecnología e Innovación, algo bien del sector privado. Nada bueno salió del sector público, afuera. Ministerio de Trabajo, Empleo y Seguridad Social, afuera. Ministerio de Educación, adoctrinamiento, afuera. Ministerio de Transporte, afuera. Ministerio de Salud, afuera. Ministerio de Desarrollo Social, afuera.
Oh yeah, he like
Afuera,
lists all the different
Yeah,
just
right
out,
now
kind of.
there's 18 different ministries, and
Yeah, the Ministry of Gender
yeah,
Conformity
and he's like
out.
yeah, and he's looks like he's doing that. He's getting rid of all of those. He's already announced the like the Department of Women and Department of Women is getting abolished like the day that he's elected. So yeah, so it'll be a huge challenge, but it's massive challenge. But it's the first time, Keith, that the Peronists don't have the majority in the Congress either. Like the first time ever, the Peronists. So he, might have a chance to save it all, and so going forward, it just I can kind of get into a few of the challenges they have, which is the central bank he wants to close. However, the central bank has so many liabilities that they have to figure out. The government is in so much debt; it's absolutely insane, and overall, it's just a really bad situation that he's going to have to navigate, and he's going to have to navigate with his party, La Libertad Avanza, being not the majority in the Congress. So Bullrich's party actually has more in the Congress. So if you have La Libertad Avanza, which is his party, got, for example, in the like, let's say the House of Representatives, La Libertad Avanza has, if I recall, like 40 members. Bullrich's party has, I think, 60 some members, or maybe more than that. Maybe it's like 70 or something. And then the Peronists, the Kirchners, actually have over 100. So altogether, they have more members than the Peronists. But I mean, they're gonna have to. He's gonna have to make some. He's gonna have to make some coalitions, basically. Yeah, have you been listening to me, Keith?
No, I
Okay.
lost my internet for a while, but you kept talking, so just keep going.
Basically, all I said is that the government. I don't know when we want to wrap up, but I'll end it with this: the Argentina is in terrible shape. With Massa, they were almost certainly going to hyperinflation like Venezuela in 2014. And Milei's going to have to do everything he can to save off hyperinflation. And the government is in so much debt that they don't have hardly any dollar reserves. It is like an untenable situation that basically Milei is so smart. He's a brilliant economist. I think he can overcome it. But like, do you have the graph really quickly of the party structure, like in Congress? I showed you that, Keith.
Let me pop that up. Keep talking.
Yeah.
I got to reload it.
Yeah. So basically what I was saying is that between Milei's La Libertad Avanza and Bullrich's and McCree's party, they have the majority. But the biggest plurality is actually the Kirchners, the Peronists. So in the Congress, so they're gonna have to make some deals and to get some of what Milei wants done.
This
Yeah,
one?
yeah. So that the blue one there is like Massa's party, 108. But if you look in the House, between La Libertad Alonso, which is the Libertarios, the purple ones, um, Bullrich's party, they have the majority.
Libertarios, that's the Libertarian.
Yeah,
That's Malay's party, La
yeah, yeah.
Libertad Avanza.
The Senate is unfortunately, like what it would be. The Senate is even tougher. If you see those are even even narrower. So the blue one is the Peronists, and the one on the right is like the anti-Peronists.
So
So
this is the
that's
number of members. I mean, just I'm roughly reading this. This is the senators, right? In the
yeah,
Senate.
right. So
Members of the Senate for the 5 parties. And this is the
yeah,
House? Is that
yeah.
am I
The
reading
top
that
one
right?
is like the House, equivalent to the House because it's got more people, and the bottom one is like equivalent
Okay.
to the Senate.
So there's
And
7 parties in the House. That's what
yeah,
they're
so
saying.
you
Okay.
see that they're going to have to make some deals and do some coalitioning
So
to
they end up forming coalition governments because they have
basically.
more
He's
than 2
gonna
parties.
he's gonna have to, and hopefully he can convey to the center right parties how dire the situation is, and that they are going to hyperinflation if they don't do anything, which
Okay.
will put 90% of the people in poverty. So it'll devastate the economy like Venezuela in 2014. So
So I'm
you
thinking
know,
the way I'm interpreting it. So this means if they get these 3 together, there's 136 members.
yeah,
If
and
they
they can.
form a coalition with these 3, they'll have more than the Peronists, the blue.
Yes, yes, and I think that spending is the House. If he wants to reform tax policy, that's the Senate, the bottom one. And as you
Okay.
see, the Senate actually has narrower margins. The Senate's going to be even tougher.
Yeah, there's
So,
only
part
31.
of it, yeah. So part of it is Milei is hoping, Milei hopes that he can make some changes and get the economy on its feet from sinking. They're estimated 100,000 people a month going into poverty in Argentina, Keith. I mean, it is
Oh,
bad. So he's hoping he can reverse it and stabilize the economy and bring it back to stable economy. And in the midterms, they can even get a bigger majority. That's what he's hoping. So, and then they can even go further, So Malay's going to do what he can to, and we're talking about getting rid of the central bank. You brought that up. And did you talk?
yeah,
Have we
but in the
talked? Okay.
beginning,
Okay.
so we talked about just eliminating their central
Yeah.
bank, their
So
equivalent of the Federal Reserve.
yeah, and it's considered the worst one in the entire world.
Oh,
So it's the worst one in the entire world. It's really bad. And he wants to get rid of it and have a free competition of currencies. But here's the issue. If you did that right now, it would lead to hyperinflation. Argentina has this thing called the LELIX, and the LELIX is this short-term debt that they use for monetary policy,
mhm.
and that is the only thing that gives Argentina the peso any value pretty much whatsoever. And companies and businesses use it to help pay their employees in pesos. Okay. And this thing is a total Ponzi scheme. It is a total Ponzi scheme. They keep refinancing it so they don't have to pay the principal on it. And if that blows up, Keith, the economy, bankruptcies everywhere. The economy's blown up. It's going to be like 2021, but 2001, but worse. We're talking about the economy blown up, and that's Milei's. That is what Milei has to fight. So before he can, before Milei can dollarize, he's going to have to fix that situation. And that's what he's doing right now. He's trying to find a way to unwind this this terrible toxic debt that the central bank has. You know,
Yes. To do this, I don't know this. I'm just going to point out this graph. I just looked for one. 2023 inflation rate is saying 122%. Like
it's more
the
than
money,
that.
and it's 140 now. You're saying.
Yeah,
Also, I don't know where they get these numbers, but somebody's predicting it's going to go down. I don't know. All right, ignore everything after this tall line.
Well, it's still, he won't be able to completely reverse inflation right away. Obviously, there's a lag to these things.
Yeah, I just
And
want to make it clear, people, that it's going up, and it's here. It's now 140% right now this year, and everything else is predicting the future, which has a terrible track record. So don't pay any attention to any of this. That's my 2-minute evaluation of this graph.
So I think
you can see this is meteoric rise. So the central bank has not learned its lesson.
No, and the central bank, not only that, is the central bank liabilities, they're insolvent. The central bank is insolvent, and it has these a Ponzi scheme, this LELIX situation, it's a debt instrument that's denominated in peso, that nobody really wants it, because it's can you imagine a debt instrument denominated in peso?
You can't buy a car in it. You said that in the beginning.
Yeah,
you can't buy a house, you can't buy a car.
But it's a Ponzi scheme, and it's because inflation's so high. It's a short-term debt. I can't remember how long it is. It's like a U.S. Treasury. It's a short-term debt instrument that they keep refinancing, so they don't have to pay the principal. So they don't have to pay the principal back to the owners of it. So
that does sound familiar to an American.
And to refinance it, they have to double the interest rate, the payments they're getting every year. Okay, so they can't pay the principal back to the people. You know how debt bonds work that way, where at the end you have to pay it back to the person. So they keep refinancing it so they don't have to pay it back to the people. But to get people to accept it, they keep doubling the amount of payments they have to give. You see? So they have to double the amount of interest that they're giving the people. So it's a total Ponzi scheme that cannot be fixed because they can't pay the principal. So what Milei is doing right now is he's trying to unwind this LELIX. He's trying to sell it to like Wall Street and stuff. Yeah. So it's just like this is
throw it away. It's almost like throw it away.
Yeah, but they can't default on it, you see, because companies and banks use it. They own it. So if you defaulted on it, you would bankrupt all these companies. And all these, it would be a disaster. So this terrible like problem. It's like the 2008 crisis. It's like that, but worse. With the all the banks had the subpar securitized mortgage. Yeah, the securitized. It's like that.
Yeah, except the numbers are 100 times.
Yeah, it's way worse.
Level.
And they use that to actually pay their employees sometimes. So they'll buy and sell it to get pesos because it's denominated in pesos. So if they need to for payroll and stuff, they'll do like repos on it. They'll do all these financial mechanisms to help pay their employees and stuff. So it's just like you can't just. So that's one reason he's not dollarizing right away. Is what would happen is immediately everybody would just dump the peso, and it would cause hyperinflation. It would cause this LELIX thing to blow up, and it would be a disaster for the economy. So
he sounds like somebody that he has a chance of turning Argentina around. It's possible.
It's totally possible. It can't go anywhere. It can't get much worse.
It can always get worse.
It can always get worse, but it can't get. It's so bad now that it.
So the currency's useless.
The currency's useless. And that Milei would always. That's his whole thing. Is he would always talk about that. In his rise to fame, he'd always be honest about all of these things. So. We'll see.
We got a month, right, or so. December 10th is when he
December 10th, and he needs to hit the ground running.
Is he building a coalition government now?
Yeah, we'll see. I think because Bullrich and Macri are on his side, and they know how desperate the situation is, and I think they are willing to go with Milei to try to save the country. I think they're actually patriotic, which is they actually have this thing called patriotism. Whereas Massa and the Peronists they only care about, they're just criminals. That's all they.
Yeah, it's a racket. The government is just part of their criminal organization.
Yeah, even if it went to hyperinflation, I don't think Massa would have cared. Even if 90% of the people were plunged into poverty, it's 40% today, Keith. 40% poverty. 60% of the children are born into poverty, and it's not like U.S. poverty. It's Argentina poverty. Okay, it's like slums and that type of poverty. So 40% of the people are in poverty. If it went to 90%, which this like hyperinflation would cause, like Venezuela, Massa, I don't think would even care. I don't think the Peronists would even care. They would still be getting rich. They'd still be collecting all the remaining of the tax dollars and taking it, and taking all the bribes and all that stuff.
And he's got the majority of the House and Senate members behind him.
He's got the Milei?
Massa.
Oh no, he has the plurality. He's got the biggest portion of it, but altogether they have more. But like in the Senate, it's very close. It's very close.
Okay.
So the Senate's gonna be tough. But the House, they have a little bit of a bigger majority, and the House actually does the spending. So we're hoping that they can actually start cutting spending, because Milei says that he is not going to run a deficit this year. He is not. He's not going to compromise on the deficit. We are not going to run a deficit. In the last 123 years, so since the last 123 years, since 1900, Argentina's ran 113 deficits.
And he's going to turn that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he thinks he can turn.
So he thinks he can turn it around.
It will be interesting to follow that.
Yeah, it's going to be super interesting. And, I don't think it's ever happened exactly in this way before. Maybe you can think of somebody else, Keith, that's like had this sort of rise.
Not by election.
Maybe Trump, maying Trump,
close.
but Milei is way more. Trump has been known for 40 years. Trump is a big figure. Milei 10 years ago, nobody even knew who Milei was. So total outside.
Yeah, it's an amazing story. I look forward to following it. So you have any kind of final thoughts of where you want to take a wild guess what's going to happen on December 10th? Assuming somebody doesn't shoot him. I mean, what's the risk there of the insider?
There's a risk that people will try to kill him. I think Milei is not a politician, and he doesn't want to do any of the bells and whistles stuff. And on inauguration, Milei actually wanted to have an open mind. Milei is fearless. He knew about his risk.
Out in the crowds.
Yeah, he knew about his risk of assassination this entire time, and he has been in the public fearlessly. And he said that if you watch his Tucker Carlson, and he is fearless. He basically that. Do you know that New Hampshire famous slogan, "Live free or die, death is not the worst of all evils"?
Yeah,
that is how Milei lives. He is not afraid of death. He is really, and he said that in the Tucker Carlson interview. By the way, that is the biggest interview of all time. Yeah,
watch that.
Watch the Tucker Carlson interview. It's episode 23. So go down. It's on X, Twitter.
Okay.
Go down and watch it. It's got 428 million views.
400 million. Tucker's on fire since.
Yeah, and it's the biggest one he's ever done by far.
I'll have to watch that one
with Milei. I mean, this
does
guy
Milei speak English?
He does. He supposedly he does some. He did it with a translator, but it does very well. They did a great job with it.
Okay, no, it's a trend. I was just curious.
Yeah,
I haven't seen him talk.
Supposedly he does. He has a big accent, and I think he does speak English, but not. If he's going to do an interview with among 400 million people, he's not going to.
People, and he's going to talk
Yeah, he's not going to
economics.
mess up. And by the way, he's running for president in Argentina, so
Yeah.
he wants people to hear him in Spanish too.
Yeah.
So, but he supposedly when Trump called him to congratulate him, he spoke to him in English. So
he could do greetings.
yeah, he could probably speak some in English. I'm sure
Yeah.
he knows a lot of academics and stuff.
But his
You know, at
Tucker
least-
interview has a translator. That's all I was asking.
Yeah, and to speak to in a huge interview like that, he's probably not going to want to make a mistake. He wants to be very precise. And
No,
you
I
watch the
understand.
interview, he's very precise with his language. So
I will watch it. So that's Tucker Carlson. Which episode again?
episode 23. Just go down his
23.
X thing and
Yeah.
go down. And anyways, so watch that. Anyways, a closing. Viva la libertad carajo means long live freedom, damn it. Or that's his famous statement. Vamos Argentina, vamos Milei. I'm going to be hoping and praying for Argentina. I love this country very much. My family's from there. The more you learn about Argentina, the more you love it. I tell people to look into, follow this and support Milei. Look into Argentina. Take lessons from Argentina, because Argentina shows how socialism can destroy a very good country. So support Milei. Me personally, I'm a free stater. I love New Hampshire. So look into New Hampshire. Come visit us in New Hampshire. I run a community center. Keith's been there. I mean, did you have a good time at the Shell, Keith?
Loved it. Yeah,
Yeah.
we went 2 or 3 times to the Shell in New Hampshire.
Yeah. So
that's how I met Skot. So, and I've seen your posts about Argentina, which is when I realized that, you'd be a great guest on this. So I think what we should do is, if you're willing, maybe after he's had a month to stir some, to use his language, start stirring shit, right?
Yeah. We will see. I mean, I'm going to be following it closely, so we'll see.
I would love to have come back on, say a month after, and you report what has he done in his first month.
Yeah, so it'll be fast. It's going to be absolutely fascinating what's going to happen in Argentina, and we're just going to hope and pray, that he can make enough changes to stave off hyperinflation and bring Argentina on its feet.
Yeah, for people that follow Austrian, that believe in Austrian economics and that aren't Keynesians, don't believe in the socialism. Look, this makes you think, well, maybe it is possible. So if the state, if my state leaves the union and we get a guy like Milei and turn it around, maybe it's possible.
Yeah. Yep. I mean, I don't want to trash anybody, but a lot of these, the libertarian commentators and stuff, didn't even mention Milei. It's a little strange,
There's not that much on him.
There's not much on him, and it's very bizarre that some of these people have never even talked about Milei or gotten into this, because this was as I told you, Keith, this is a fascinating thing that's been going on that I've been following, and there's been nobody covering it. I did a podcast on Milei. Chris Baker, I recommend his stuff. He's done 24 episodes on Milei. I was one of them. But he's the only one. There's been nobody talking about it, which is just it's been a little bizarre to me.
I think the topic is to quote, this is unsafe space. For people that are familiar with this, like Rebel Civics, we talk about this. I want to talk about this, but my looking around, I didn't find that much.
There's nothing,
and in English, trying to find stuff in English.
There's nothing. Yeah, there's not. You'd think that there would have been. I didn't
know about the Tucker one. I would watch that.
I feel, you wonder. It's kind of like the Free State Project is very successful. We're actually making actual progress, but a lot of people don't like to talk about. A lot of these major political, liberty people don't like to talk about the Free State Project, even though we even though we're the only ones that get tons of libertarians elected, and we're the ones that actually have political power in New Hampshire, people don't like to talk about it.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of people like to sell things, sell hope and all this sort of stuff, and all. And by the way, I love these people. I'm not naming any names. I love them all. Okay. I love people that talk about liberty and stuff and civics and what you talk about, Keith. But you just never, it was frustrating that people don't talk about the Free State Project and its successes and what we can learn from that. And it's been frustrating that people haven't talked about Milei either.
Yeah, we have. So, if people want to look into that. So the Free State Project is for those who haven't paid much attention to my show. That's the New Hampshire movement where liberty-minded people move to New Hampshire. So the idea is that they've given up on making the United States a pro-liberty. The Libertarian Party, for people like me that have been watching that for most of my life. I mean, I voted Libertarian my first election in 1984, maybe.
Wow.
So, and it didn't do anything. I shouldn't have bothered.
Right.
So now I
Right.
realize that and I watched the whole Cato. I subscribed to Reason magazine when Nick Gillespie was the young hotshot new editor, and I watched Reason go into the cabal, and I dropped my subscription to that a couple years ago. So I don't expect like Cato or something or Reason to really do a hardcore. They're DC libertarians, Beltway libertarians.
Yeah.
The term.
And
and they don't cover the Free State Project either.
Yeah, and so exactly. And this whole thing with Argentina, and people might be like, "Oh, we can do it in Argentina. They happen in Argentina, and we could do it here." But prior to Milei, if you would have talked to me 2 years ago, Teeth, I would have been like, "Argentina is the biggest black pill in the history of the world. Argentina is this rich country that, like I said, is the richest country at the turn of the century that has been 100 years straight down, and just straight down and." No matter how bad it gets, they kept electing the same people.
Going.
They kept electing the same people up until Milei. So, the United States, for them to finally elect somebody like Milei, I think that it'll have to be a similar type of economic where everybody's becoming impoverished.
We're not even close to that in the United States.
We're not even close to that. So I'm that's why I'm not hopeful that we're going to have a Milei figure. Now, the U.S. is a little different, and I'm more like you, Keith. I'm more in a decentralization, free stater, Florida, decentralizing, Texas, all this sort of thing, nullification, states going their own way, breaking off from the federal government as much as they can. So I don't think at least right now, what Milei is doing is going to be replicated in the U.S.
The United States, from what you just said over the last 2 hours, learned a lot about this. The United States is nowhere near where Argentina is economically, so you can't get that. And I think, secondly, as you said, they're really provinces. So I would expect before the United States got to that point, you'd see the fuse pop. You'd see Texas would leave, New Hampshire would leave, and several others. That are even movements are pretty far along. Florida, I don't know. Florida's not at the same level then, but like Texas would not. I don't think Texas would stand for that.
I think
and New Hampshire would be long gone before it can ever get to that point.
I think you're right. I think it's a different system. We have a federal system, and that's one thing that's saved the United States, I think, over Argentina. And
we still have the residual of the setup with 50 sovereign states in a union.
Yeah,
it is still there. It is still there.
Yeah, so I think it's one thing that saved the United States and Argentina. So it's it's a different situation, and I'm like, but it's just a weird thing. It's just people haven't talked about him, and even Reason is they're kind of jerks to him a little bit.
I watched it. They
They
had a
like
very
him.
short. There was like a real short interview last week. I listened to the beginning of it, even though I don't listen to much Reason anymore. And I was
Yeah,
the biggest fan of Reason. I like gave
I don't
people
hate him, but
in the
I like.
90s. I was giving my family subscriptions to Reason for Christmas. Like
Oh yeah.
I was a big, and I dropped my subscription 2 years ago
Oh wow.
because
Yeah.
of the when you hear the chief editor just gushing over she could finally get her kids vaccinated. Like,
Oh gosh.
these are not my people.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah. Yep. And Milei isn't that way either. He was really against the lockdowns and all that stuff. And
Well,
that's another thing, that he was one of the only voices. This totally illogical lockdown that they did in Argentina. This insane lockdown.
it goes with the other part, right? So.
Yeah. So I mean, he's just been right on everything, domestically in Argentina. So.
All right, so let's plan on something in January after he's been
Okay.
office for a month.
Yeah, let's
we'll,
see what happens,
We'll
man.
give the unsafe space.
There's going to be
Rebel
there's going to be riots. There's going to be Argentina's like France, where they go on strikes and crap all the time, and they're already planning them. So how does he navigate that as well? There's just so much to navigate, that their debt situations, so not just with the central bank, but with the debt situation, so bad. He's going to have to navigate all of this. So, and they left him in a terrible situation. But the thing is he's extremely smart. And if there's somebody that can navigate this and get this done, it's him.
Oh.
An Austrian economist.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing. You get an Austrian economist in charge of a country like that. So,
yeah.
All right. So, yeah, thanks for joining Rebel Civics, Scott. So,
yep.
We'll do a follow-up after he's had a month to see what kind of shit he manages to stir. I'm looking forward to watching this story.
Viva la libertad, carajo.
Viva la libertad, carajo. Yes. And thanks for joining. All right, everybody. Tiene un buena semana. Thanks for watching Rebel Civics.
This production was made possible through the generous support of our members. To join our community, visit unsafespace.com. Unsafe Space is an online publication for individualists interested in subverting authoritarianism and ushering in the next Enlightenment. For biting analysis and nourishing composition, or to sign up for our weekly news brief, The Abstract, visit unsafespace.com. Thanks for joining us today.
Warning. This is an unsafe space. Dangerous ideas have been detected. The content of this production has not been authorized for distribution on Apple devices. The following co-conspirators are hereby uninvited to Klaus Schwab's Winter Solstice Party. Please be advised that CBS News has paused activity on Unsafe Space while it continues to assess security. Central bank digital currency is a safe and secure way to protect you from Sam Bankman-Fried. If you think about it, no one should be allowed to express opinions. But don't. Think about it, I mean. That's not your job. Thinking has been scientifically proven to be less efficient than compliance. Science, scientific, and scientifically are registered trademarks of the World Economic Forum. Unauthorized use is prohibited. Computer voice courtesy. Never mind, that last line is misinformation. Please disregard it and return to your safe space immediately. There will be cake.